Hey there, it's me Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access, link in the description.
She spent the afternoon outside. Not far. Just sitting on the porch, letting the sun warm her skin. The snow was almost gone. The trees were still bare, but the air felt different. Lighter. Like the whole world was waking up. Spring was coming. And Ginger. Ginger felt like she was waking up, too. Like she was stepping into something new. Something real. Something she wasn't afraid of anymore. She didn't know who she was becoming. Didn't know what her future looked like. Didn't know what it meant to have a life that wasn't just about surviving. But she wanted to find out. For the first time. She wanted to try. Pip found her eventually. Plopped down next to her with a dramatic sigh. Ginger raised an eyebrow. "Are you dying?" Pip groaned. "It's so nice out and I hate it." Ginger smirked. "Tragic." Pip flopped onto her back. "I was made for cold weather. Snow. Chaos. This? Sunlight? Warmth? Disgusting." Ginger snorted. "You're so dramatic." Pip grinned. "I know." They sat there for a while quiet. Then, Pip tilted her head. "You're thinking again." Ginger exhaled. "I hate that you can tell." Pip smirked. "It's a gift." Ginger shook her head. Pip nudged her arm. "So, spill." Ginger hesitated. Then, finally, "I don't know what I want to do with my life." Pip blinked. Then shrugged. "So?" Ginger frowned. "So, I should know." Pip raised an eyebrow. "Says who?" Ginger swallowed. "I don't know," she admitted. Because no one had ever given her the space to figure that out before. She had spent so much time running that she had never stopped to think about it. Never let herself consider what she wanted. Not what she needed to survive. Not what was practical. Just what she wanted. And now, for the first time, she had to. Pip leaned back on her elbows. "Well," she said, stretching her legs out. "What do you like?" Ginger frowned. "What?" "What do you like?" Pip repeated. "Not what you're good at. Not what you think you're supposed to do. Just, what makes you happy?" Ginger hesitated. Because that was the question, wasn't it? And she had never let herself ask it before. She thought about the library. About mornings in the kitchen. About quiet evenings with a book. About the way she felt when she wasn't waiting for things to fall apart. And she whispered, "I like being here." Pip smiled. Soft. Like she knew. Like she had already known. And she just said, "Then start there." Like it was that easy. Like it didn't have to be complicated. Like Ginger didn't have to figure out everything right now. Like she could take her time. And Ginger believed her. For the first time, she believed it. That night, when she climbed into bed, she didn't think about leaving. Didn't think about running. Didn't think about what she had to do to survive tomorrow. She just thought about living. And what that could look like. Not just for today. Not just for next week. But for the rest of her life. She didn't know what that would be yet. Didn't know what she wanted yet. But she was willing to find out. And for the first time, that didn't scare her. Not at all. Ginger had spent weeks letting herself belong. Letting herself settle. Letting herself have this. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't thinking about running. Wasn't thinking about leaving. Wasn't thinking about what if I lose this? But just because she had stopped running, didn't mean the past had stopped chasing her. It started with a dream. The kind that didn't feel like a dream. The kind that made her wake up with a racing heart, her breath caught in her throat, her skin damp with sweat. She was back there. Back in that house. The walls too clean. The floors too quiet. The air too heavy. And she wasn't Ginger anymore. She was him. The person she had left behind. The person she had spent years trying to erase. The person her mother had tried to force her to be. She was standing in the kitchen. The old kitchen. The one from her childhood. The one she had never let herself think about since the day she ran. The light was too bright. The air smelled like chemicals, like bleach and fake citrus, like something sterile. Like something that was trying too hard to be clean. Like something that was trying to erase what was underneath. She heard the footsteps before she saw her. Click, click, click. Sharp heels on tile. Slow, deliberate. Her stomach twisted. She turned. And there she was. Her mother. The woman who had spent years trying to turn her into something she wasn't. The woman who had spent years breaking her down, piece by piece, until she wasn't sure if there was anything left. She looked exactly the same. Not a hair out of place. Not a wrinkle in her perfect, pressed clothes. Not a single expression on her face except that same cold, sharp disappointment. Like looking at Ginger was a burden. Like existing in the same room as her was a chore. She spoke. The words sliced through the air like a knife. Go wash your face. Ginger froze. Her throat went tight. Her chest felt heavy. Her mother's eyes scanned her. The way she always had. The way that made Ginger feel like she was something wrong. Something that needed to be fixed. You look ridiculous, her mother said. Ginger swallowed. Tried to speak. Tried to say anything. But she couldn't. Because she was that person again. That boy she had never been. That boy she had been forced to be. That boy she had spent years trying to escape. The dream didn't let her move. Didn't let her fight back. It made her small again. Made her helpless. Made her feel like she was trapped in that house all over again. Like she had never left. Her mother sighed. Like she was tired. Like she had tried to be patient, but Ginger had ruined everything again. You're not my daughter. The words hit like a slap. Like something shattering in her chest. You never were. Her stomach dropped. You are nothing. And then, the kitchen disappeared. And she was falling. 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 Until she wasn't. She woke up gasping. Like she had been drowning in it. Like she had barely clawed her way back to the surface. Her hands were shaking. Her pulse was roaring in her ears. The room was dark. Quiet. Safe. But it didn't feel safe. Because her mother's words were still ringing in her skull. Because she still felt like she was back there. Because she still felt like she was that helpless, broken child. The one who had never belonged anywhere. The one who had packed a bag in the middle of the night. Who had walked out the front door without looking back. Who had sworn she would never go back. Who had sworn she would never let anyone hurt her again. Ginger sat up slowly, her breath shaking. It was just a dream. Just a dream. But it didn't feel like one. It felt like something was pulling her back. Like something was reminding her. You don't belong here. You never did. She didn't go back to sleep. She just sat there. Heart pounding. Thoughts racing. The dream felt like a warning. Like she had let herself believe in this for too long. Like she had gotten comfortable. Like she had forgotten where she came from. Who she was. Or rather, who she wasn't allowed to be. The next morning, she was quiet. Too quiet. She went through the motions. Got dressed. Went downstairs. Drank coffee. But she wasn't there. Not really. She was still in that dream. Still hearing her mother's voice. Still feeling the doubt sinking into her ribs. Still thinking, what if she was right? What if she didn't belong here? What if this wasn't hers to keep? What if she had been fooling herself this whole time? Pip noticed first. Of course she did. She always did. She plopped down next to Ginger, nudging her with her foot. You're brooding, she said. Ginger scowled. I am not. Pip smirked. You so are. Ginger sighed. Didn't argue. Pip studied her. Didn't say anything for a moment. Then, softer. What's wrong? And that? That almost broke her. Because how was she supposed to explain? How was she supposed to say it? That she had spent her whole life running from herself. That she had tried to erase the boy her mother wanted her to be. That she had spent years becoming Ginger. That she had thought she was safe from all of it. But it had found her anyway. Had crept back into her bones. Had made her question everything. She didn't know how to say that. Didn't know if she could. So she just swallowed hard. And whispered nothing. Pip didn't believe her. Of course she didn't. But she didn't push. She just nudged Ginger's foot again. A silent, I'm here when you're ready. And somehow, that was enough. For now, Ginger had spent so much time burying the past. Packing it away in dark corners of her mind, locking it behind doors she never planned to open again. Because remembering meant feeling, and feeling meant hurting. She had promised herself never again. Never again would she be that scared little kid. Never again would she let someone tell her who she was supposed to be. Never again would she let herself want something that could be taken away. But the past had a way of finding you. Even when you ran. Even when you thought you were safe. Even when you finally let yourself believe you were free. And now? Now it was clawing its way back up. Because no matter how much she wanted to pretend, she had never really escaped it. She didn't sleep that night. She just sat there, staring at the ceiling, hearing her mother's voice in her head, sharp and cold and final. You are nothing. And the worst part? She had spent years believing that was true. Had spent years thinking she had erased that part of herself. That boy. That wrong version of herself that her mother had forced her to be. But the memories were still there. Still waiting. Still haunting her. She pressed her palms to her eyes. She had spent so much time trying to forget. But now, she was remembering. And it hurt. She was 6 the first time she realized she was different. Too young to understand why. Too young to have words for it. She just knew. The dress had felt right. Her sister's dress. The one she had stolen from the closet, slipping into it when no one was looking. It had been soft. It had fit. Not in a way that was too big or too small, but in a way that felt like something clicking into place. Like something that had been missing. Like something that made her look in the mirror and see herself for the first time. And for 5 whole minutes, it had been magic. Until the door opened. And her mother saw. And everything shattered. She still remembered the way her mother's face froze. Like something had cracked behind her eyes. Like Ginger had done something unforgivable. She had been too young to understand. Hadn't known why her mother's hands shook when she grabbed her. Hadn't known why her voice was cold when she said, "Take it off." She had tried to say it's just a dress. Had tried to say it doesn't mean anything. Had tried to say it feels nice. But none of those words had come out. Because she had seen it. The rage. The disgust. The disappointment. And she had known. Somehow, in that moment, she had known. She had done something wrong. She didn't know what. Didn't know why. But she had known. And so, with shaking hands, she had pulled the dress over her head. Had folded it. Had handed it back. And her mother had stared at her. Like she was something broken. Like she was something that needed to be fixed. Like she was something that should never have existed in the first place. She had been 6. Too young to fight back. Too young to do anything except nod when her mother told her never to do that again. Too young to realize that she had just lost something. And that she wouldn't find it again for a long, long time. The memory hit her like a punch. Like a wave crashing over her. Like something she had spent years avoiding, suddenly demanding to be seen. She clenched her jaw. She wasn't that kid anymore. She wasn't that boy. She had left him behind. Had buried him. Had become Ginger. And here, in this house, in this new life, no one had ever questioned it. No one had asked who she was before. No one had looked at her and seen anything except her. And that should have made her feel safe. But now, after that dream, after remembering, she felt exposed. Like if she let her guard down, if she told them the truth, it would all disappear. Like it always had before. The next morning, she was quiet. Too quiet. She went through the motions. Got dressed. Went downstairs. Drank coffee. But she wasn't there. She was still in that memory. Still 6 years old, standing in that too-clean kitchen, hearing her mother say, "You are nothing." Still 14, getting shoved into lockers at school, hearing them call her names she couldn't repeat. Still 16, leaving home in the middle of the night, knowing she could never go back. She hadn't thought about any of it in years. Hadn't let herself. But now it was all she could think about. And she didn't know how to make it stop. Pip noticed first. Of course she did. She always did. She plopped down next to Ginger at the table, watching her closely. "You're brooding," she said. Ginger scowled. "I am not." Pip smirked. "You so are." Ginger sighed. Didn't argue. Pip nudged her foot under the table. Soft. Casual. You good? Ginger's throat tightened. Because no, she wasn't. Not even a little. But she didn't know how to say that. Didn't know if she could. Because what if Pip didn't get it? What if none of them did? What if? No, she couldn't think like that. She just had to push it down. Like she always had. Like she knew how to do. So she swallowed hard, forced a smirk, and said, I'm fine. Pip didn't believe her. Of course she didn't. But she didn't push. She just nudged Ginger's foot again. A silent, I'm here when you're ready. And somehow, that was enough. For now. But Ginger knew. She couldn't run from this forever. The past wasn't done with her yet. And sooner or later, she was going to have to face it. Ginger had spent years trying to erase the boy she was forced to be. But erasing wasn't the same as becoming. And now, in this house, with these people, for the first time, she wasn't just running from who she wasn't. She was learning how to be who she was meant to be. And that was just as terrifying as the past she was trying to leave behind. Because wanting something meant risking it. And Ginger had spent her whole life teaching herself not to want. She still wasn't sleeping well. The past had a way of sinking in during the quiet hours, creeping back in when she was too tired to push it away. But the next morning, she woke up to something different. To something soft. The smell of something baking. The sound of voices murmuring downstairs. The warmth of sunlight stretching through the window. Safe. Normal. Like she belonged here. She sat up slowly, rubbing her face. Pip was already awake, stretching like a cat, yawning dramatically. She glanced at Ginger. Raised an eyebrow. You look like you fought a demon in your sleep. Ginger groaned. I hate you. Pip smirked. You love me. Ginger grabbed a pillow and threw it at her. Pip cackled, dodging effortlessly. And somehow, that simple moment, that ridiculous, familiar, comfortable moment, made her chest feel just a little less heavy. The house smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. When she got downstairs, she found June and Julie in the kitchen, making some kind of pastry disaster. Julie had flour in her hair. June had batter on her sleeve. Mom was watching them from the counter, sipping tea, smiling like she had already accepted that the kitchen was going to be a mess. Normal. Soft. Ginger hesitated in the doorway. Because this wasn't what she had grown up with. Her old house had never smelled like this. Had never felt like this. Had never been warm. Her mother's kitchen had always been too clean, too cold, too controlled. Everything had a place. Everything had rules. There had never been room for chaos. For fun. For mistakes. For her. But here it was different. Mom looked up and smiled. Morning, sweetheart. Ginger swallowed. Felt that familiar ache settle in her ribs. She sat at the table without thinking about it. Julie grinned at her. Okay, good. We need a taste tester. Ginger raised an eyebrow. For what? Julie shoved a plate in front of her. Pure, unfiltered culinary excellence. Ginger poked at whatever monstrosity was sitting on the plate. This looks illegal. June smirked. Eat it, coward. Ginger sighed. And for a second, just a second, she let herself be here. Let herself have this. Let herself belong. She took a bite. Julie beamed. June watched, expectant. Mom sipped her tea, amused. Ginger swallowed. Then, I have never tasted something this horrific in my life. Julie gasped. June cackled. Mom laughed softly. Be nice, sweetheart. Pip plopped down beside her, stealing a bite off her plate. Then immediately gagged. Oh my God, Pip wheezed. That's disgusting. Julie shoved her. It's art. Pip coughed dramatically. It's poison. Ginger smirked. And somehow in the middle of all of it, she felt okay.
Please subscribe my channel for the next part. And visit my Patreon page for early access.